you've come and envision where you're going to be.
Welcome once again to Church Alive, and this is your host and president of Church Alive Development Corporation and the proud pastor of Church Alive Community Church. And once again, we're here to bring you a holistic approach to everyday offense. Every day we're having different things happen to us, but every day there's a right approach and then there's a wrong approach to things. And one of those things that we're going to be talking about is personal injuries, accidents. Right now, every second, someone is having an accident. The question is, do they know what to do, and what is the right and what is the wrong thing to do? We're very fortunate today to have my attorney, Jason Kessler, who is with us. And Jason and I go back about 15 years when he was much older and I was much younger. And I think right now it's still not even up all the way. But I thank God that we have another opportunity to bring quality information, resources, and services to improve the lifestyle of all of our viewing audience. And so, Jason Kessler, welcome to Church Alive.
Thank you, Reverend.
Tell us a little bit about your background before we go into personal injuries.
Sure. I started my career working for the New York City Law Department, where I defended New York City. I also worked for insurance companies and defense firms. After that, I started the law offices of Jason B. Kessler, where for many years we've been serving the communities of New York City and Westchester, and we handle personal injury cases and workers' compensation cases, such as slip and fall, automobile accident cases, and medical malpractice cases.
Thank you very much for that. And I can assure our viewing audience that you have done a wonderful job in handling many people that have been referred to you. And we have a religious audience. We have pastors and ministers and people out there who care for the people that they serve. And I know that this information is going to be passed on from the leadership that watches down to those who are parishioners and then to the everyday people that have allowed us to bring this program into their homes. Well, Jason, what is a personal injury?
Okay, a personal injury is when you or a loved one have been injured as a result of other people's negligent actions. What is negligence? When they did something wrong, when they did something that they shouldn't have done. And because of that, you're injured, and you're seriously injured. And that's what personal injury is all about. Now,
there are different types of injuries coming from different types of hazardous situations. But let's take the ones that are most prevalent, and that is car accidents. When a person has a car accident, what are some of the basic things that they should do?
Okay. When you are first in a car accident, you have to be very careful. You have to make sure that the police come right after the accident. You should also stay in your car. And although I'm not a doctor, you don't know the nature and extent of your injury. You don't know how hard you've been hit. You don't know really how much you've been hurt. So the most important thing, first of all, is to make sure that the police are involved. And if you need medical attention, to make sure that the medical personnel arrive at the scene of accident and you need to go in an ambulance, go into the ambulance.
Well, sometimes, people, I know I've had a situation with an accident and I got out of the car, and then when the police arrived, they told me, you better get back in the car and sit down. What is the right thing to do if you have an accident?
The right thing to do when you have an accident is to, first of all, get the police to arrive. And the police gave you some good advice. Although I'm not a doctor, from my experience, I'm seeing hundreds and hundreds of accident cases. If you leave your car without being checked out, you could have had a serious spinal injury, and you can hurt yourself even further. So the police gave you very good advice in that instance. After an accident, you should wait the car, and you should make sure that the police come. And if you need medical attention, you should get an ambulance and take you to the nearest emergency room.
And now, when you get to the emergency room, someone walks in there and he says, "I'm your lawyer." What is this? Okay. And why? And is that legal? Is that right? Because you're there and you're going through a lot of pain and suffering. You are looking for help. But this help comes, with it is coming from a different way.
Okay. Well, first of all, that's unethical. An attorney shouldn't meet you at the hospital unless you yourself have contacted that attorney to come to a hospital, or a friend or a family member or a loved one invited that attorney to come to the hospital. If someone comes up to you while you're in the hospital and says, "I'm your attorney," you should say, "Well, how did you get here? Who referred you to me?" And you should always make the determination about an attorney with thought, because it's a very, very important decision.
Is it good to have good records or even a camera when you in your car? Now we have cell phones. We shouldn't. That's not a problem. But what would be the advantage of having and using your cell phone?
Okay. Well, if somebody pulls up in front of you, let's say after they rear-ended you, and you want to take a picture of their license plate, that's very key. Because a lot of times people don't wait for the police, or they do what's called a hit and run. Many times people's personal injury cases and their right to compensation have been saved by quick thinking and taking pictures of the other person's car and license plate.
Okay. Now, we hear this word a lot, pain and suffering. How is pain and suffering, how do you determine it?
Okay. Pain and suffering is how the injury has impacted your life. For instance, your relationship with your children, your relationship with your spouse, your ability to do the things that you love. Another phrase that is often used with pain and suffering is loss of enjoyment of life. Let's say, for instance, that you enjoyed running around the oval or running track before the accident, and because of the accident you couldn't do that. Well, that's loss of enjoyment of life. Or let's say that you had a hobby or enjoyed walking with your spouse and taking walks at the end of the day, and you can't do that anymore. That's another example of loss of enjoyment of life, and that's compensable. But that's not the only thing that's compensable in a personal injury action.
I had one case as a pastor. You have a lot of your members who come to you with different situations, and this was a very elderly person and a female, and she had an accident. Actually, it wasn't even an accident. Yes, it was. Sometimes we don't want to coin things as accident, and I'll tell you why. She went to a clinic to have the nails on her toe worked on, clean. And the doctor there, the clinician, he cut down too deep. And she, in other words, she started bleeding. And he went ahead and told her, just take some of this salve and put it on it, and he let her go home. Okay. When she went home, the toe got more infected. And eventually, the end of the story is she had sugar diabetes. He didn't check for that. Give me, what do you do with a situation like that?
Well, listen.
Let me give you the other part of it. Then when she went and she got an attorney to sue, the attorney said there wouldn't be any money in it because she was too old. I think she was about 85, 90 years old, and he wouldn't take the case because he said there was no money in it because she was too old.
Well, I should say that attorney should have a dose of humanity, because if you're 85 or 8 years old, if your life has been affected and your quality of life has been affected, it affects you at any age, 8 or 85. What the attorney may have been telling her is the future pain and suffering may be limited because of her age. However, people can feel pain and suffering at any age, and there are many people who, in cases that we've handled, who have cuts and bed sores from nursing home accidents or incidents where caretakers forget to turn them around, forget to take care of them, and these people go through tremendous pain. And yes, they're on a bed, and yes, they can't move around like they could when they were 8, maybe they're 85, but they go through a tremendous amount of pain and suffering. So regardless of the age, you can have pain and suffering. So perhaps that attorney should, have a dose of humanity and try to put themselves in that accident victim's shoes.
You would take that kind of case?
Well, it depends. If that case may be a medical malpractice case, I would need to get an expert to say that doctor or that clinician deviated from the accepted standard of care. And if they did deviate from the accepted standard of care and there were serious life-altering injuries, then we may have taken that case. But every case is different. So if you have a case, please call our office, and the number will be in the bottom of the screen somewhere during this program.
Sure.
And give us a call, and we'll discuss your case, and we'll discuss if we can help you out.
Well, that's the reason why, I appreciate you being on Church Alive, because I believe I'm being proactive. And I want my audience to know that this is an attorney that they can engage not when they have an accident, but before they have an accident. So if they do have an accident, they can get legal advice from somebody they already know. And so I would say to my viewing audience that as the telephone numbers come up, take it down and put it where your doctor's telephone number is, and put it where, you have the pastor's telephone number. And so that if something should happen, you know that you have met Jason Kessler on Church Alive, and he's somebody that you can call immediately.
And I just want to add that there are many communities of people that we've helped because maybe one person come to the office and then they've referred other people and other people and other people. And we've been the family attorneys for many different people because through referrals of friends and relatives. So it's important that you have our number in the Rolodex because you don't know when you're going to get in an accident. There are a lot of people out there, a lot of cars, and there are a lot of dangerous conditions, and you need to have an attorney.
Well, I want to say this, that you would not be on my television show unless I felt that you were quality and your services were good and that you were checked out by Dr. Burkett. And my audience now for over 30 some odd years, they expect that, and I give it to them to make sure that no one comes on my show as a guest unless they have quality service and that they can provide the services that my viewing audience wants. Now, I want to go into a situation that we also on television, digressing a little bit, but still talking about accidents, and these are injuries. Now, we know Donald Trump had a campaign manager, and the campaign manager did something wrong to a reporter. Can you tell us your viewpoint on that?
Okay, well, if you look at the videotape, and again, I just look at the videotape that's out there and reading media, it seems that perhaps, and this needs to be proven, that there was an assault. Okay, so if that happens to you, if you're assaulted by someone, especially someone who is employed by a company or a municipality and is doing something within the course of their employment, you may have the right to seek financial compensation against the company. In this case, Mr. Lewandowski, it seems, was acting like a bouncer almost and grabbed that poor lady's arm and caused her injuries. Now, all these things need to be proven in court. However, if the allegations are true, then Donald Trump's campaign can be sued, and Donald Trump himself may be able to be sued for negligent hiring, retention, and supervision, because you as an employer are responsible for your employees' actions. So in that case, there would be a potential lawsuit. Now, granted, that's in Florida and it's not in New York, but had that been in New York, there is a cause of action for that lady to sue. And I'm sure in Florida there's a cause of action for her as well.
Right. Now, we're going into occupational hazards. You handle those cases too, right?
Workers' compensation.
Workers' compensation.
Yes.
What should a person do if they're injured on the job?
Okay. Immediately, you need to notify your employer. And there's a form to fill out, an accident form called C3. You need to fill out that accident report as soon as possible. If it's a very serious injury and you're transported from the place of the accident to the hospital, you need to make sure that those forms are filled out. You need to give your employer notice within 30 days, and written notice is preferred. And then you have to file workers' comp, shortly thereafter. There is a 2-year statute of limitations. However, I always tell people to file immediately. And workers' comp is very complicated. Yeah. It's a lot of forms, a lot of acronyms. That's why as soon as you get hurt in a work-related accident, you need to seek an attorney. Because without an attorney, your rights may not be protected.
Now, I have a lot of immigrants that watched this television show over the years, and they work as home attendants and nannies and housekeepers, and they are injured many times, but they are afraid that if they report it, they would, number one, lose their job, and number two, there may be actions of the employer against them. How is that true? And what's wrong and right about that?
Okay, first of all, if you've been injured at work and you have an employer, you're injured because of something you did for that employer, you have a right to workers' compensation, okay? And that employer cannot take punitive actions against you. He can't punish you by law. He can't discriminate against you because of your accident. And regardless if you're in this country as an immigrant or you're a citizen of this country, you have a right to workers' compensation, which means you have a right to your bills being paid. You have a right to 2/3 of your salary up to, there's certain restrictions, but 2/3 of your salary while you're out. And you have a right for your medical and transportation expenses to be reimbursed. So even if you're an immigrant and you're not a citizen of this country, you have a right to workers' compensation. And let me also say that in my experience, that some of the most horrific accidents occurred because immigrants to this country have done jobs that most American citizens won't do. And very frequently, and this is very sad, I get people coming to my office missing limbs because they do very hazardous work. So regardless of your citizenship status, if you are injured at work, you need to get an attorney immediately.
Well, I'm glad you said that. I'm glad we brought up the subject, too, because we have thousands of immigrants that are watching this program right now. And I know that they are relieved to know that they're not just left to heal by themselves or to have an injury for life, and just because of, and they're afraid to come out. But I know they're happy to know that they have a legal advisor and a defender of their rights right here in Jason Kessler. So, and I would say to many of my immigration clients that are watching, that his words are true, because I've already in the past have sent him immigrants that have been injured, taken advantage of, didn't get their wages, and that's another thing too. Some people have worked, and then the employer says, "I'm not going to pay you, and if you make an issue out of it, I will call the immigration service." That again is an action against that person's rights. Am I correct?
That is correct. And let me also add that even if your employer illegally employs you, meaning that he doesn't have workers' compensation insurance.
Go ahead.
And that happens, unfortunately, more often than 80% of the time. A lot of times, especially with immigrants, a lot of times, especially in the lawn care industry or some of these construction industries, they don't have workers' compensation insurance, and you know what? That's illegal. But if you are injured, you are still entitled to workers' compensation under what's called the UEF, which is the Uninsured Employers Fund. Now, these cases are a little bit more difficult and they take longer, but we have successfully gotten compensation and medical benefits for many, many immigrants who have worked for people who didn't have workers' compensation insurance.
But what about the confidentiality? Because a lot of immigrants are concerned, that just going to a lawyer is going to expose them and things like that.
Okay. Well, the workers' compensation system okay, you get a workers' compensation index number, and it's within the system, okay? And regardless of your immigration status, you are entitled to workers' compensation.
Okay. Now, there are many, our roads and our streets are messed up in the city. And sometimes the accident is not somebody hitting you or running into you or you running into someone. It's running into a pothole or a manhole cover or something like that. Or sometimes there's an explosion right there in the middle of a street because of some gas leak and your car is injured. Or you're in a line of construction. You're driving along and all of a sudden you're sprayed with concrete because the guy who's paving it or doing the construction work isn't watching where he's doing, and you got concrete all over your car.
Reverend Burkett, tell me where those roads are, and I will never drive on them.
So what is your recourse? You get out there, or you just curse and swear and holler at the person, or what do you do?
Well, the most important thing is if you were injured because of the negligence of others, be it the municipality because of potholes, or be it because of a construction company who's spraying the construction materials, asphalt at you, is you need to document it. The most important thing that I can tell your viewers is documentation, documentation, documentation.
And call your lawyer.
And call your lawyer. But you want to make sure that there's a police report there. You want to make sure that's an accident report. Regardless of where the accident is, if it happened in a department store, you want an incident report. If it happened on the road, you want a police report. Do not let anything go undocumented.
Suppose you had an accident and the person injures you, whether it be a car or maybe someone's sidewalk and you fall and a person runs over and says, listen, we can keep this between each other. Here's $300. Just let this fly away, disappear. And then you get up and then you go home and you find out that you have a sprained ankle that you really didn't realize you had when you slipped.
Okay. The most important thing is to get any accident documented, and don't fall for the scam of, oh, I'll give you $300. The average stay in an emergency room can be up to $5,000, can be $10,000. Right. And if you have lifelong permanent injuries and you didn't make a report, and you didn't document it properly, you could be out of luck. So I've heard many times people say to me that, oh, so-and-so came up to me and said, we'll work it out. I'll send you to my uncle's body shop, or here's $300.
Right.
Don't fall for that. Make sure that the police are there. Make sure that it's documented. And that's the most important thing you can do at a scene of an incident or accident.
Okay, I'm going to ask you some quickies because we're running out of time.
Sure.
And one, what is the statute of limitations as far as having an accident and reporting it?
Okay. Well, the statute of limitations is how long you have to sue someone else for their negligence, and it depends on what the injury is. For medical malpractice, it is usually 2.5 years. For car accidents, it's usually 3 years. However, every scenario is different, and if you've been injured, please call our office, because there are exceptions. If there's a municipality, meaning someone hit you who works for the state, who works for the city, who works for the MTA, that statute of limitations is much less. It could be a year and 90 days. It could be a year. And you may have to do something called a notice of claim, where you have to tell them about your claim within 90 days of the accident. So there are a lot of different limitations. And also, if I may, if you get injured in an accident, there are two things that I'd like to tell you. First of all, if the damage to your car was over a certain amount of money, and within 10 days, you have to fill out a form called an MV-104, which is a form that you have to send to the crash center in Albany. Another limitation that's very important is within 30 days, you have to tell your automobile insurance carrier to make sure you have something called no-fault insurance. Now, what is no-fault insurance? Let me get to that. Okay. So no-fault insurance. 30 seconds. I can do it in 30 seconds.
Okay.
So in New York, if you have car insurance, which you have to operate a motor vehicle, you have up to $50,000. Some people can purchase more of protection for bills, for medical bills related to the accident, and also you have a way of getting your wages back to a certain level through no fault. But you have to be very diligent because these automobile insurance companies want to cut you off. And they'll send you to something called an insurance medical examination, which they'll call independent medical examination. But those doctors aren't so independent, and they're always, many times they're not so fair. That's why it's very important for you to get a lawyer.
You run out of time when the information is so readily available. And I want to thank you so much for making accidents and the response to accidents and how we handle it is simple but yet very effective. And I say to my audience, I feel very good about having Jason Kessler on Church Alive, and I know that that feeling is not just on the television show, but that feeling is because we've had a long history of working things and helping people.
And I am very blessed to know you, Reverend Burkett, and to be part of the show.
Thank you very much. Well, we come to the end of a very informative show, and I know that this information will empower you so that when you do have an accident, you don't say, oh my God, what do I do? All you have to do is remember this program. And certainly you refer to your friends, your neighbors, and people who have or is going to or in the process of going through some sort of accident, on whether it be injuries or whether it be slip and fall. We can cover a large area. Matter of fact, we're going to have you back again.
Well, thank you.
Because there's a lot of things here that I really wanted to get into, but we couldn't because of how well the program was. All right, we want to thank you once again for allowing Church Alive to come into your homes. I've written a book called In the Twinkling of an Eye. I'd like every one of you to get this book. And it's a life-changing experience here of Dr. Burkett. And I know when you read it, it'll be a life-changing experience for you. And so next time, we'd like to say to all of you, we love you with the love of the Lord. God bless you. And have a great day.
Tonight and day, in you I live, in you I move, in you I have my being. In you I live, in you I move, in you I have my being. As I live my life day after day, I'll stand on your word. As I acknowledge you in all my ways, I am never alone. As I listen and I hear you speak, your words convey a message to me. In you I live.